Let's start by going over what most of you probably already know. First person is where the camera is located inside of your character's head, allowing you only to see what they would see. Third person is where the camera is located behind your character, usually over a shoulder. And if you already know that, then you should at least know how to count to 3. So obviously at some point the second person got lost. I mean, they're still in the general vicinity, just refusing to hold the camera. There are numerous games with second person narration. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, the DM is the second person. You do this, you do that. The second person is very controlling. A Stanley Parable gives a perfect example of a second person narrator struggling to maintain their power and force the player to progress the story that they're trying to tell. But there is a reason the second person talks, yet doesn't control the camera. It would be chaos. Riots would ensue, blood would rain down from the sky, the fabric of space and time would rip apart. Or it would just be awkward to control a character, I guess. About a year ago, Nick Robinson made a video about second-person games and what they would look like. This resulted in him showing a level from Trover San Francisco. However, there is a whole second-person game out there, people. I know, hold on to your trousers because things are getting interesting. It's called Trover Saves the Universe, developed and published by Squanch Games, a company founded by Justin Roiland, who you may know from their wildly popular cartoon show, Solar Opposites. Trover Saves the Universe is a farcical game that pretty much lampoons the entire activity. It's not an enjoyable experience to play. In fact, this game goes out of its way to be the most annoying and least satisfying experience possible. Trover makes up for its intentional flaws by being an entertaining meta-critique. The story arc is complete insanity and the dialogue is hilarious, but you won't get to hear any of it because I would much rather leave my nasally voice consistently grating against your eardrum. Life is not fair. The second point of view is kind of obnoxious when trying to explain it. In this game, you play a character who controls another character. So you use a controller to control the controller of a controller. I used a keyboard. Throughout this game, you essentially play as the camera, and I don't want to bore you with the lore, but long story short, your dog gets kidnapped, so Trover kicks in your door to help you find it, then grants you control over his body using little eye babies that will act as power-ups as you progress through the story. I know, just stay with me here. Controlling your character is immediately awkward. The player is locked to a specific location until Trover stands in a circle allowing them to teleport. It would sometimes feel as though Trover is the only character, but most of the time this whole second person point of view was a special kind of aggravating that keeps you up at night. Especially when being introduced to elevation, you're able to extend and retract yourself in order to get a better view of things, but this mechanic actively works against you. There are various platforming sections that are much more difficult than they should be because instead of getting to be Trover, you actually play a chair-bound alien with a controller, which is something that the game refuses to let you forget due to the fact that the off-brand third-party joystick has a permanent space at the bottom of your screen during the entire playthrough. The character you actually play is practically useless. The game actually taunts you by giving you a puzzle that doesn't involve Trover, and I sat at this simple light-switching brain teaser for 20 minutes, so imagine how stupid I felt when realizing it was impossible and just put there to say that puzzles are boring. This game is an asshole, and this puzzle is a hemorrhoid. In fact, Trover Saves the Universe is less of a game and more of a satirical art project. In a game that takes itself seriously, the second person point of view would be an absolute nuisance. It's counterintuitive, forces an awkward controller layout, and often fails to function properly. But seeing as how Trover is Trover, basing the whole game on a pain-in-the-ass gimmick fits the narrative perfectly. In Trover San Francisco, the second person point of view is used for entertainment, and in Trover the second person is not there for entertainment. And that's the point, because as stated earlier, the game makes up for it with an abundance of comedy. Without Trover there to control, you're just a chairperson alien. Without him, you might as well just be throwing paper balls into a trash can for fun. But when you really do have to hunker down and get shit done, the second person point of view is beyond frustrating. At some point, you get the power to move objects. This eventually results in another puzzle where you have to put stone rectangles into holes. Being that this game says fuck you to puzzles, I thought you could just drag Trover to the top, but for some reason this game wants you to actually solve the problem. But putting stone rectangles in holes is not the difficult part. The difficult part is trying to maneuver in the second person. Trover Saves the Universe is also a hack and slash game, but eventually they start requiring you to throw shit in combat. You throw shit by clicking on an object then dragging it to the enemy you want to hit, but sometimes the enemy is too far from Trover to keep him in your line of sight, so you have to put Trover in a relatively safe spot so he doesn't get beaten up. This is the video game equivalent of rubbing your stomach and patting your head. Even though it's a great idea to have both players cooperate trait to win a fight. At the end of the day, you're just playing with yourself, which is a very fitting and witty pun, I might add. Thank you very much. The first and third person work very well together. There are even games that switch between the two. Most racing games give you the option of either first or third person points of view, and third person shooters usually allow you to switch to first person when using a scope. Both these points of view center themselves in direct relation to the playable character, always keeping them as the main focus, whether it be located inside of their head, behind their back, or over their shoulder. The second person is self-centered. They focus on the main character only if needed, but would rather observe their surroundings, sometimes acting out and causing difficulty for the player because they know they aren't supposed to be there. The second person wants to share the limelight and shift attention towards themselves like a narcissist at a birthday party. And I really have to hand it to Justin Roiland and Squanch Games for making a completely unique experience involving the second person point of view. There's no other game like this, with good reason. They are the only team that has the balls to make gameplay this tedious, and the only team with the charisma to make it enjoyable despite that fact. Actually, come to think of it, I guess being able to move objects technically makes this a first-person view of a third-person beat-em-up puzzle platformer with just a second-person perspective camera, but I'm complaining about an obscure topic involving a satirical game that was created with the sole intention of pissing off its players. So at the end of the day, you could just toss this video aside as a pointless commentary providing nothing more than a waste of time and hopefully a little entertainment. I mean, I wouldn't blame you, considering that that would be a perfect conclusion to what essentially boils down to an attempt to expand on a topic presented in an old video from a person I've never met. In the end, nothing matters because in the grand scheme of things, we're all just insignificant bags of flesh wandering around in circles trying to keep ourselves occupied until our inevitable death. My apologies for that nihilistic outburst. I just watched an episode of Rick and Morty and decided to devote myself to a pessimistic philosophical ideology. But there it is, Trover Saves the Universe, the closest thing to a full second-person game I could find. I want to know what you think about the subject. Have you found any truly second-person game? Can it be done effectively? Does Trover even count? If you have these answers, please leave them in the comments. If you enjoy me rambling on about various topics in gaming such as this one, feel free to subscribe. But most importantly, stay safe and have a nice day. Peace out.